Hello, I'm Sophia Lou and welcome to my channel.
Hello guys and welcome to my Boldmere art marker review. These are art markers that you can find up in the Works, which is a common shop that you can have here in the UK. And since these are some of the cheapest graphic markers I've ever seen, I thought I'd try them out and give my review on them and my thoughts. As always, I'll be comparing these to my Winsor & Newton markers because my Winsor & Newton markers are the markers that I use the most and that I highly recommend. So these are fairly cheap. They work out, it's £4 for a pack of 6, which makes it just under around about 70p per marker. It's something like 0.666667p, blah, blah, blah. So the first thing I always do before I even start playing around with the markers is I swatch them. And the immediate thoughts that I got was, oh boy, the bright set was really bright, really vibrant, absolutely wonderful to use, really beautiful coloured. But then the pastel range, oh, they were so off, it was untrue. They felt very dry, they really didn't match the caps very well. And like the burnt sienna that I had, the nib was just frayed and like the ink was completely dry. It wasn't really working very well. The metallic pens were really nice. I would actually use these again in another piece. And the fine liners, they were interesting. When I put them down, because I'm using the Boldmere fine liners for this as well, I figured if I was using the Boldmere markers, I might as well use the fine liners as well. I was really worried when they were going down because of the type of ink they were. They were these rollerball pens almost, and even though they were advertised as fine liners, they were almost like had a rollerball quality to them. So when they were going down, they were really wet and they took a while to dry. So I was worried that when I put the marker on top, it was going to bleed. Luckily, I did a few swatch tests beforehand and I did not see any bleeding. So these markers are not that bad. Well, these fine liners are not that bad. Not my favorite to use. It was really difficult to get, if you wanted it, a smooth line, because like every now and again the nib would catch on the paper. Now bear in mind I'm using mixed media paper here. As always with these marker reviews, I will say markers are going to perform better on marker paper or Bristol board or something with a really smooth paper. But because I use mixed media paper for everything, markers need to work the best on mixed media paper for me. That is just something I use, it's something I prefer, and so like I always say, if you want the best performance for markers, use them on marker paper. Okay, so what were my pros with this? The colours are really bright, they're really vibrant. I can't fault them on that aspect. They layer on a single layer beautifully, but when you really saturate the colours to do the blending method that I do, I basically blend my lighter and darker by slowly doing like a saturation of the lighter marker on top of the dark marker, and it was causing like the paper to speckle through it. It was having these really bad issues even after I layered twice. You can, if you look down on the arm at the bottom of my little dear girl, you can see this really bad speckling, and that was just caused by the marker being gone over. I think it was on its second layer when it started doing that, and that's not good for markers. You can expect speckling when you oversaturate the paper. It's expected to happen, it's what happens. But if after your second layer it's starting to do that, that just shows that the ink quality is not that great. I probably would not expect these markers to last very long as well. Are they good as a cheap alternative? Absolutely. If it's your first time trying markers, as always, as I say with art supplies, sometimes it's worth getting a cheaper art supply and then building up to a more expensive. However, out of the cheaper art supplies I've used, I will not recommend these. The reason why I won't recommend these is because there are other markers on the market, and I have done plenty of marker reviews. I will link them all down below so you can check them out. I always have a playlist just specifically for my art supply reviews, so I'll also link that so you can check that out. I've done plenty of marker reviews now to know what does work and what doesn't work, and some of them are slightly more expensive. I haven't done a Copic marker yet. I can't afford Copic markers just at this moment in time, but like, it's very interesting to see the difference between them. Now, normally when you are using markers, you're going to want a mid-tone to go in between two tones. This is so that when you are blending, it is much easier. So in order to replicate the same sort of colour format as with the ones I've used with the Boldmere markers, you'll notice I'm using very similar colour tones in the Winsor & Newton. Ideally, if I had more colour choice that I was able to use, I would use more mid-tones in between to help blending. This is just helpful when it comes to blending, and it really does like bring more of a continuity in between your markers. So say if you're going to go with an orange and a yellow, you're going to want an orange yellow to fit in between to help that blending go much easier. But it's just like, they were cheap, these markers. The colours were bright, so I could not fault it on that end. But there was just so many cons, like the colours didn't really match the top of the markers. It felt that some of the markers were already dry despite literally the packet just being opened. Darker colours were really speckling on the paper, and this is even after one layer. I'm just going to give you a few close-ups now. The fine liners smudged easily when applying because they were so wet when applying. If you like pressed your hand on it accidentally, they would just smudge so easily. For some people, there is no brush tip option on these at all, and the blending unfortunately isn't the best, especially when it came to some of the tonal work. Now, I'm not hating on these markers, I would never hate on an art supply, but out of your cheaper art supplies that are out there, I would not recommend these. These certainly are a nice cheap alternative if you're just wanting to use them for sketchbook practice, or if you're wanting to try and see if markers are for you. But in all honesty, there are better, cheaper markers out there, and I will recommend them. Did I have fun with some of these art supplies? I had fun with parts of it. There was definitely parts that I really did enjoy. But overall, like, the barrels feel cheap. The lids, sometimes when I pulled the lids off, like the actual tip came off with it, and that's not good. That is not something that you do want. So I hope this review has been somewhat helpful. If you guys do have any suggestions on art supplies you would like me to review in the future, please do let me know. It is something that I really do enjoy doing, and it's something that I like to try out and see what's out there. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, comment down below on any art supplies that you would like me to try out. But as always, folks, stay creative.